Now, we will kick off this program with an opening keynote on shaping a cashless economy by the United Nations Development Programme. Niloy Banerjee is the resident representative for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam. Niloy previously led the UN Systems Affairs Group in UNDP, based in New York. We are very honored to have Niloy at the conference as our opening keynote speaker. He will be back soon, so stay tuned and check it out.
Greetings, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues from the Star Media Group. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Let me first start by congratulating the Star for organizing the Digital Finance Conference. And of course, thanks very much for inviting me to speak to this topic, which is, as we know, a very, very timely topic because of this whole pandemic has shown us the massive rise of digitalization, and in both its good sides and its bad sides. So what I'd like to talk about is really digital finance and moving on to issues like cashless economy and what it will take for us to make it inclusive so that everybody can participate, and also fair and inherently take us to a more efficient space than what we currently have. So let me say that in everything that we've seen in the last 1 year or so, we've seen quite a bit of mayhem in the economy, of course. The economic growth has been in the negative, unemployment has been high, and then that layers on to more structural challenges that the Malaysian economy has, which is an aging population, fewer women in the workforce than men. Amidst all this, one of the positive changes has been this accelerated trend of digitalization. School closures have meant that much of education has moved online. A lot of retail shopping, food as well as other items have moved online. And frankly, as I will quote a little bit later in this talk, there are other areas where digital business has grown massively, including in banking. But let me first come to something that UNDP has been saying in the digital space for a while. UNDP in 2020 put out, 2019 actually, at the end of 2019, put out what we call the Human Development Report, our flagship report, where we said, a new kind of inequality is going to emerge in the world, which is digital inequality. Who has access and who doesn't to digital services, to digital infrastructure, to digital facilities. And we had said that households, for instance, that do not have a full digital infrastructure set up, such as broadband connections, such as computers for every child, such households will fall behind households that are more well endowed in these areas. So we had actually almost precisely said there will be a digital divide that's emerging. And then, of course, COVID made it very painfully clear to us. So let me kind of unpack what are the preconditions for digitalization to take hold in any society before I come to Malaysia. First is the supply conditions. Do we have the infrastructure, digital and physical, to facilitate the digital ecosystem? Do we have bandwidth? Do we have an e-commerce ecosystem, etc.? The second element is demand conditions. What are consumers, what is the appetite of consumers of the rakyat to engage in a digital economy? And then do they have the tools and the skills, which I was just talking about in a minute ago, to participate in the digital economy? The third element is the institutional environment. What do the country's laws facilitate or hinder? I mean, there can easily be laws which are not very digital friendly. On the other hand, there can be laws that are quite facilitative of a move to a digital economy. And then finally, how is the innovation ecosystem? The fourth element is, how's the innovation ecosystem of the country architecture? Is there the talent? Is there the capital? Is there financing flowing in? Are universities training enough graduates to be digitally savvy? And then, what is the digital economy producing? Are these digital products? Are they scalable? Are they marketable? Do they have a global market beyond Malaysia? So, based on some of these elements, the world is kind of divided into countries that are outstanding in digitalization. There are some which are good but slowing down, which I would say most of the European economies fall in that category. Some are the ones that are about not great at the moment, but about to break through and doing, advancing quite rapidly. And then some, a fourth category of countries which are not really catching on with the digital age, and therefore need to be vigilant. No, otherwise, they will fall too far behind. So, I'm happy to say that Malaysia is really in the standout group of economies. It's got a high digitalization penetration of digitalization. It's got reasonably good infrastructure, but then there are caveats to that. Of course, there are many exceptions there. So let me see what some of the UN work on digitalization is, right? Where is it at? The Secretary General of the United Nations, when we signed the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 and promised to get to a certain goals and targets by 2030 as a global community, the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Antonio Guterres, he established a task force on digital financing, and which was actually led by UNDP, the organization I work for. And this task force sort of went about its business, and last year it released its report, People's Money, it was called. And the full title was Harnessing Digitalization to Finance a Sustainable Future. It laid out a number of recommendations. But what it fundamentally says at its heart, at its very core, is digitalization will be a good thing, a force for good, if it ultimately works for the rakyat, if it's citizen-centric. And therefore, it must touch upon issues, social sector issues like health, education, disaster risk reduction. It must look at or in some way support the fight against climate change, the fight for clean water, the fight for clean air. It should support the struggle for gender equality. It should foster peace and democratic institutions in societies. So let me now sort of bring that all to Malaysia. What does it mean? One thing, colleagues, we have seen during the pandemic is the digitalization kind of exploded in Malaysia. It's really, if you see the difference in the figures on any parameter of digitalization between 2019 and 2020, it's grown massively. Let me just take maybe 3 data points. the digital economy, the contribution to overall GDP of Malaysia was 20%. So 1/5 of the Malaysian national income or gross domestic product, GDP, is now contributions from the digital economy. So that's about 290 billion ringgit per year. Second data point, mobile banking. Mobile banking doubled between 2019 to 2020 in the era of the pandemic. It went from 200 billion ringgit to almost 460 billion ringgit. Third data point, mobile banking subscribers, people like you and me and others who use mobile banking, online banking, rose by about 2.5, 3 million people. So from 17.2 million in 2019, the number of mobile banking subscribers went to 20.2 million in 2022. So in some ways, the pandemic has really accelerated the whole kind of digital finance, digital banking space in Malaysia. Having said that, it's not all obviously evenly distributed. Although Malaysia has 91% of Malaysians own smartphones, and 86% of Malaysians use one form of social media or another, either data exchange or more popular social media sites, which are friends groups, etc. Now, that said, it's still primarily a cash-based economy. Most payments, over 80% of all payments in Malaysia are cash. Also, worryingly, as you know, the country has, out of its population of 32 odd million, about 24 million are adults who are of the age which enables you to open a bank account, to own a bank account. But only 24 million, of the 24 million adults, only there are close to 2 million that are not in the banking system. They're unbanked, as we call it. And of these 2 million who are unbanked, 86% belong in the B40 household group. So that's already a huge red flag, if you like. And then, of course, there are geographical disadvantages. Remote communities in Sabah, Sarawak, Orang Asli communities, and of course the undocumented communities in Malaysia, but also the migrant labor communities, documented migrant labor communities, are not very online with their digital. Now, the policy environment is increasingly conducive in Malaysia, as you know. The Malaysian Digital Economy Blueprint, which was released earlier this year in February by the Prime Minister, it's called My Digital. We've done a global scan of digital economy blueprints, and I must say Malaysia's My Digital is actually one of the stronger ones globally. It's a very well-written document, well thought through, very comprehensive. There's also the National Digital Infrastructure Plan, Jendela, right, which was initiated last year, which really looks to expand the coverage of broadband in the country. And then, in all the stimulus packages that we have seen come out during the pandemic, we have seen that the government has nudged towards digital payments. And during the pandemic, Malaysians have used about 15 million Malaysians have used one form or another of digital payment, touch and go, grab pay, boost, etc. And in the budget for 2021, the government announced the 150 ringgit e-Belia program for the 2 million youth between 18 and 20 years old that we have in this country. Bank Negara, as you know, is also pushing for huge digitalization, and they're planning on issuing new licenses to digital banks. A policy document on the licensing framework is already out there. And of course, the Know Your Customer system is now increasingly electronic. And of course, Malaysia remains open to try and attract the best digital talent in the world, including some of the bigger software companies. So I would say, in terms of building blocks, the country is ready to go to make a big push towards digitalization. Now, there are challenges, of course. As I said before, the B40 remain kind of out of the loop for most digital services. Socially, we Asians are also conditioned to have cash. We don't feel comfortable if we're not carrying cash. I do it too. I can tell you if my wallet is empty and it's just my credit card or something, I do have a sense of uneasiness. So culturally and socially, we are also attuned to having cash on us all the time. And then, of course, we also need to be very, very careful that in Malaysia, we build the talent pool for a digital economy. And then, therefore, universities and private sector and government are very much in sync on this. Of course, as I said before, usage of bank accounts is very low. But overall, colleagues, our direction of travel is in the direction of digitalization. I want to say two more things about digitalization, which really strikes us as very, very important in unity. One is, when the pandemic hit and physical business, meeting and doing business physically was not possible. We tried to look at the small and medium enterprises in Malaysia and see whether they were digitally capable, whether they could do e-commerce, whether people could go on a website, find their products, order, just as we do with Lazada or Amazon or Shopee or the other shopping portals. And we found that the small and medium enterprises are not at all digitally savvy. They're not capable of digital marketing. And therefore, during the lockdowns, they have really suffered. So we started a pilot where we got small and medium enterprises to go more digital, to put their products online in online catalogs and allow their customers to order online. And we also did some training of these enterprises to be able to sell. How does one actually sell something online, which has two parts, of course: delivery of the product to the customer, but also receiving payment through digital means, getting onto finance gateways. So we've built a little bit of an infrastructure in Sabah with a few SMEs, and we are very proud of it. It's doing well, and more companies are joining. Companies meaning small and medium enterprises are joining the effort. Second, colleagues, one very, very important thing about digitalization, which is, we don't pause to think, is digitalization is also an anti-corruption instrument. You will remember that one generation ago, many high-value transactions, such as buying a property, such as buying a house, used to be done on two-track financing. One was what you paid by check, or what was visible, and then what was carried silently in a briefcase and then handed over. Digitalization has begun to address that issue. And now globally, in most systems, most financial systems of the world, you can only pay a certain amount by cash. The rest you have to pay in a way that has a digital footprint. And therein comes another big area where governments should be very happy about digitalization. And Malaysian government, as you know, is now putting into its building code that if you build a house, just as you have to provide water and electricity as standard fitment in a house, or a condominium or an apartment, digital infrastructure is something also that you have to almost automatically build into a house now. So the second thing I want to point out about digitalization and the black economy or the hidden economy, colleagues, is avoiding taxes in a digital finance world becomes much more difficult. And as you know, in Malaysia, we do have a problem of under taxation. Some very, very high value individuals and companies don't actually pay market rates of taxes for various reasons. But it becomes that much harder to hide money, to hide incomes in a digital economy system. So, colleagues, I will sort of begin to wrap up here, just to leave you with a few, maybe 3 sets of interlinked closing thoughts. One is the need to develop catalytic opportunities to deliver digital financing and bring it into the mainstream, into markets, into capital markets, into households, into tax systems, into banking, retail banking, the kind that you and I use. Second, of course, build the foundations for a digital ecosystem, digital financial ecosystem, accessible, affordable connectivity, digital privacy. I didn't talk much about privacy, but colleagues, as you've seen, the recent summit between President Putin and President Biden was quite, it focused a lot on cybercrime and what is called ransomware. A big American corporation, as you know, had to pay $11 or $12 million to hackers who had hijacked its system. And the two countries, Russia and the US, had quite a big dialogue about it. Sometimes I believe unpleasant. I wasn't in the room. Finally, the issue of capabilities. We have to build the people's capacity to be online, to be digital, to be digitally savvy, and get on, if you like, the digital highway. So, colleagues, thank you very much. Thanks again to the STAR Group for having me here. We will all together, the media, the United Nations, and others, we would all need to get together to bridge the emerging digital divide so that no one is left behind. We will need to manage the risks around digitalization. And I think 10 to 15 years down the road, we would say that, this was the moment in time, this was the moment in history when the whole world kind of went digital. So with that, I wish you all a happy Digital Finance Conference. And I really, really want to wish the STAR a very, very happy 50th anniversary, the whole group. Congratulations and well done. And thank you for everything that you do every day, that you bring the news to us, that you keep the country honest, that you keep us thinking about where we are coming from and where we are headed. Thank you and goodbye.